Hey guys, this is Pamay from VBA to Z, and today I'm going to show you how to query or import data from external workbook based on your parameters and inputs from the user interface. It's been a while since I posted my last video, but I'm really happy to be back, and I'm coming with lots of fun stuff, real case projects that we can all work together and learn together. So please continue to support our channel by subscribing and sharing this with all your friends and colleagues. Our today's question came in from our friend Satyavan Ukil. I hope I pronounced it correctly. So this question was posted in our prior video that was regarding exporting the data from one workbook to another. So this is one way to reach out to me, as well as you can directly email it to me directly to email ID vba2z.team@gmail.com, or you can directly post it to our community where all of us can see and contribute directly to this particular forum. Okay, so without any further ado, let's get started. This is our data set. This data set basically contains the transaction data by customer. Here's customer name, the address, the contact information, the amount, and the transaction type. So I'm gonna bring in all these headers from this workbook to a new workbook. This is a blank workbook I have. So let's transpose this. I'll just quickly get some of the fields that we need to send as a parameter for querying the data. So we'll call this customer, maybe company name, not the address, maybe the state, zip code, phone number. No, let me just get rid of those. Transaction date is important, so I'll just leave it there. So we'll use this as our input and then query our data from other Excel database. So I'll just quickly make this like a UI real quickly. So this will be our parameters, and then this will be the user input. And let's quickly create a name for this using a selection. So create from selection using the left column here. So now I have all the name range, so that's good. So we'll use that in our program later on. And once we run a program later on, so let's say this is our search button here. Let's call this search. Okay, and we want to bring in data from this table, so I'll just copy part of this table or all of it just for now, just as a skeleton, like a template, and the data, and then I'll just get rid of all the data set here. Remove the grid line. So our table is ready. Our basic parameter where we're gonna send to the program is ready. So let me save this workbook as let's call this front end or query, whatever you want to call it. Okay, this one will be like a home, or you can call this query master, something like that. Okay, so let's start writing a program to quickly pull, like based on, like your filter. If the customer name is selected, we'll filter it here, and so on for other dates, for the dates and other fields. So let me close our source workbook, and I'll quickly record a macro just to create a quick snippet of the code. Import data, I'll call this, or I'll just say query data. Sorry, that's my phone. Okay, so I'm gonna quickly open the workbook, and we'll just try it for one field, and then we'll replicate it for the rest of them. So I'm just gonna filter. Maybe if you want to like use the syntax for like match, we'll just use the contain, for example. So all the names that contain, let's say Lena here, so I'll just say Lena, and then try to do a filter for date. Let's call this 21st Jan. Okay, it doesn't work like that. So I'll tell you more about dates in a bit. So June 28th. Okay, so that is done. So once this is done, we want to copy the data, the visible data only, to our table here once you're done with that. So we want to activate the sheet also and clear the clipboard once you're done. So I'm just going to close this workbook without saving. Let's quickly have a look at the code that has been generated. So it looks like the workbook open was not recorded. Let me quickly record that again. Control O, and then I'll just select the data workbook, and then that's it. So down here you can see like workbook open and select this step. So bring that at the top. So this is basically open the workbook, select this data, T data tab from this workbook called data, and then first it's applying a filter here to Lena, the customer, and then down here it's filtering on the date, which is this 6/28, and then once that is done, it's basically copying the data that is visible, this syntax or range from this range from A1, so that's in our source file, so I'm not gonna open that now for now. So copy the data, come into this workbook, paste that in E3 range as values and number formats. Just get rid of unnecessary codes there. So after pasting the data, first activate the sheet and paste the data, and then just select range A1. So let me quickly do one thing. So this is for one of the fields. So only if the customer name is entered here as in the input, then we want to query. Otherwise, if it is not, then we want to leave it as optional. So that means that you can enter the name of the customer. You can enter, like this could be, you can query based on multiple parameters, or you can just filter on any one of these fields as well. That should be okay. So like you can make a validation based on your requirement, but this will be just as a demo. So first off, I'm gonna try this for the customer name. So let's create a name range because we're going to reuse that a lot. So dim data range as range, and then I'll say like set range equal to this. So we want the data range to be this. So of course we'll have to make this dynamic because the last row of the data set that we'll be pulling from is going to change because it's not going to be static all the time. So we're going to take care of that as well. So we'll say like dim lr, basically a sort from for last row with the data. So as long, we want to call that long. We want to assign a long data type, basically a number. So here I'll say once it reaches here, I'll say this. I just want to remove all the filter if it is in place. Auto filter mode equal false. So we'll say lr. So we'll assign a value, what will be the last row of the data, for example. So really quickly, we'll set one column, for example, column A, for example. So whatever data is at the bottom, that will be treated as the last row. So it's gonna, treat new data accordingly every time you do it. So lr is equal to, let's do this, range a and rows dot count. I'll just give a quick dot and xlf dot row. So basically this is saying like go to the bottom of the sheet, rows dot count, that is the rows dot count, a rows dot count. From here come up, so whatever is the last row row with the data, that's going to be treated as the last row of the table. So we have assigned a variable here, so we can reuse it now here in our range. That's our dynamic range now. So instead of saying that we want to filter this range, we'll say use the dynamic range that we have filtered. So we have now for customer and the date. So talking about the date, so if you're specifically filtering on date, we'll use this in index 2. I'll talk more about in another video for that. And then when we're copying the data, again, we want to copy here only the visible ones, and like we want to consider the dynamic range again, but we don't want to copy the header. So in this scenario, I'm just hard coding it again as a range, so it's dynamic. So again, for the workbook, we can say dim. We want to create a variable for workbook WBS workbook. We can see set WB equal to workbook, and then maybe you might want to open it as read only. Read only as true. So by default, it's gonna get activated, but I'll ensure that. Open the data set, clear the clipboard, set the last row for dynamic range. Range has been set here. So we're filtering on the customer, filtering on the date. This will become again our dynamic parameters. So instead of Lena, I'll say we'll create a new variable called customer. We'll just call this customer, and then we'll say dim customer as string. So this will be a value, whatever was dynamically assigned later on based on your input is gonna come here. Let's do the same thing for the date. We'll call this parameter date, and then here we'll assign a date like this. So now another thing that we need to do is set a value for this customer. So customer will be equal to let me close this workbook. So the customer will be whatever value you input it here. So customer equal to range customer, but that should be in this query master sheet. So customer name, customer variable will be a value whatever is entered there in this sheet, which is sheet query master range customer. Range, this range is here, customer dot value. So we want the value whatever is inputted there as our customer parameter. So similarly for the date, let's do it for p date. So here's the date, and the date is the name of the range is transaction date. So I'm just gonna replicate that really quickly. And now, so we have these two parameters. The rest will be just replication of our criteria. So before we go ahead, I'll just ensure the workbook, like the memory space has been cleared. Workbook.close, we don't want to save it, so false parameter, and then we want to clean up the memory here as well. It's equal to nothing. Our data range workbook. Okay, so now we have the date parameter created and the customer. So if we just run it now, it should work because so let's try for Lena, or let's try for James if there's any customer name with James. So it's going to import it here. So if I just try to quickly debug through like pressing F8, so open the workbook, removing all the filters, you can see LR is set to 1015 here, and the data range is set. So it's filtering to all the James. If you can see like customer James, and the date is blank, so it's gonna give an error. Okay, so that's good. Now we will put a handler for the date. So that's why we need to have an if here. So like this, if date is equal to blank, for example. So based on your data set, you have to implement this differently. Similarly, if customer is not equal to blank, sorry. So if your data set is a number type, then you cannot do this. You'll have to say it's not equal to 0. So we'll replicate that later on. So if I try to run this again now, I'll stop here now. Okay, let's assign this code, this button. Okay, so it is just stop here after putting a filter to customer James, and then now it's going to check if the date, there's a date. So there's no date, there's no value for date input, so it's just keep that area and then goes and copy the data range, come back to this window, query master, and then paste it here. So let's quickly run a demo again. Well, it just pasted the headers as well, so that's not good. We'll have to do this for let's end this. So excuse me, so let me just restore the header. I know it's not important now, but just so that we have so we have to paste in E4. Is it not pasting in E4? So this has to be pasted in E4, and then okay, cool. So let's try to run it for James. So you import all the data for James. Let's try Lena. So Lena, all the names with Lena. As you can see, Glenna also has a Lena in it, so that's why this is happening. So maybe if we want to put a criteria instead of here, maybe we can do it from the field here itself. So maybe if we want to check in the name of all the Lenas, we'll do it like this. Okay, no sales were found. Okay, so we need to put a handler there. Looks like it has to be, this has to be set up within the code, not from the input. So for now, let's just leave it as it was. I'll just restore it. So for example, if you don't want to do a like match, you can do like we can put an additional criteria here, like if like match, you can create a variable if you want. Okay, let me quickly do this. So like match, let's call this another variable. If dim enable like match, maybe like this, as boolean. So if like match is true, then we want to implement this method, otherwise a fixed method, right? Like a static filter value. So for now we want to say this like match is true, or we can have a parameter here that says that. So let me bring this down here. Like match, so true or false. Okay, so like match parameter, right? Okay, so we'll say that the value should, for this like match, should come from this cell here. So based on the user settings, it's gonna enable the like match or not. So coming down here, if like match is equal to true, then we want to implement this star method. Just put a filter on the like match. Otherwise you can just say like just straight away the customer. Okay, and then of course we have to block it with NIF. So you can replicate this one similarly for other input fields. So let me just try it again. So now I put it true, so search, all the Lena has come. So let me set this to false. Oh, sorry, oops. Okay, so false, no cells were found. So there is no cells with Lena. So yeah, that is true, because there is no cell just with Lena. It has to be, if it is a full name match, then probably we'll have to put in something like this. Closing the data file again, run. Looks like our macro is still having error. Okay, so it's bringing in all the, we didn't clear the prior data set, that's why it's looking weird. So if I run this now, I did, so like match is false means it did an exact match. So that's how you can do a query to put a filter based on like or unlike match. This is just a sample again. So here we can have a validation. So insert, I don't remember where this comes from, so alt LD, so L, that is the shortcut I use. So LDL list whole number decimal custom any value. Maybe we'll just do a list for now. So true or false. So you can select this instead of having to type in. That's a full stop, sorry. It has to be a comma. So true or false. So true or false. So we want to have the like match. So that's true. So if I do this just for Lena again, it's going to bring in all the names with just a Lena in it. Okay. So before we bring in the data, we want to also clear out the table. So quickly recording it. So activate this data set and then do this. And then select A1. Okay, so really quickly. So before we do anything, we want to just clear off the prior results so that, okay, or just say activate, or also it should be okay because we are already there in that. So I'll say this workbook dot activate. So every time you run something, it clears off. So if I put here James, okay, so now let's quickly have a look at the date. So here I can see Jan 18. So if I do this, whoops, short date maybe. Okay, so if I run this, so now it's bringing all the data for Jan 18. So okay, so you know, this is how you can do it to query based on your data input. Again, let's replicate very quickly for the rest of the data set so that anytime you enter a value, I don't want the video to go really too long, so I'm just gonna replicate one more data field and you can do it for the rest of them. So now I'm gonna replicate for a new data input. Let's do it now for zip code because this is going to be a number instead of a text. So just as an example, so if this is not equal to 0, so we have to create a new variable called zip code. So let's call this just a zip, and we'll call this as long, a number without a decimal, without a point. So zip, coming down here, we'll say so we'll say zip is coming from the range called zip here. So whatever zip code you enter, it will query to that zip code specifically. So we'll come down here and say if zip is not equal to 0, if like match or this is not, I don't think this is applicable in this scenario, but I'll just have that on for now. And as you know, the zip code is in column 9. We'll just filter, we'll just specify the index field as 9 and not 1, which is for the customer, and then respectively for the date is just this. So for date, there's we don't do like a like match. So if you want to filter on the month or the year, you know, like we can talk more about that in our coming videos, but for now let's go with this. So if it is true, you want to do a like match on the zip, otherwise not. So let's try to do this. Here I can see the zip code as this, so let's try to run this. So pull in all the data for this zip code. Mismatch, so there's essentially no data. So let's put a handler for this now that we're here. So we don't want to run into error if the value, the inputs that you entered does not return any data. So to construct that, I'll just simply select this and then copy the special cells or something like that just to generate the code. Coming back here, though we already have that code sample, so coming back to our code, let's call this new variable dim query result as long, and this one is going to be So after you apply all the filter, just before you copy here, just put this as your new variable. So we'll say that if query result is greater than 1, because of that handler is having the header as well, so we don't want to count the header. So this will again be LR. So we'll say like after the data is being filtered, let's say this like this. So if there is the record count that is returned is 3, so that's greater than 1, so we're going to copy it. So if there's no criteria, let's say it returned something blank, then we want the query to not copy anything. So this part is gonna take care of that. Okay, so if we run again now, though we know the zip code is there, just more about the number handlers. So okay, our delete query here, our delete should be clearing off everything. So all the rows from E to R, starting from here till the end, just clear it off every time we run it. So if we run this now, it returns us nothing, right? So that is probably because the number is not taking this like match. So we're just going to disable that for now. You can play more of this. Just want to keep the video within certain period. So run this. So we'll say like match is false. Okay, so now it returns us all the zip codes with this because we set it to false. Okay, so similarly for the date, if I do this for 18, let's do it for 2nd June now, transaction date, and then run this. Why it didn't return us anything? So if the date is, if p date is not equal to blank, and then we want to put operation of p date, transaction date. Okay, let me just try to debug this really quickly. Column index is good, so I'm just gonna filter this. So there's data. I'm not sure why it didn't bring in the data. E2, E1 is to A, the rows count. E1 is to A and L1. Okay, sorry, this is just a bug here. Okay, so okay, so that was supposed to be the count and then row, not rows.count, so that's why it was giving error. So let me run again. So here return us this data. So now you can see like the workbook open and closed, and so let's just turn off the screen updating. Application dot screen updating equal false, and then we want to set it back to true in the end. You have to put more error handlers, and then you have to replicate for all these other ones. So we replicated for customer, for the zip code, which is a number, and then this is for the date. So these are going to be the text data again, the customer, company name, state, and so on. So you can, I'll leave it to you guys to replicate that, and then if you have any questions, just feel free to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to answer your queries. So finally, now our code is ready. So let's try to run for this state again, and then based on that we're returning a data. So let's try to put in a zip code and then get rid of this, so it will bring in all the data for that zip code. Let's try to do it for any customer name starting with having a J in it. Okay, we need to check the code really quickly here. If customer name, I think we entered the disable the wrong one here. Customer, zip code, and the date. Okay, so everything should be good now. Okay, so all the names starting start having a James in it. So if I just do a J, it will return all the customer name with having J. It could be anything. So if I just do a stock here, it's return me all the customer with the stock and so on. So our program is currently based on customer, our transaction date, and the zip code, right? So I'll let you replicate the company name, state, and the transaction type. If you face any issue, please like feel free to comment on the video below, or if you need anything from me, feel free to email us or reach out to us. And again, please do not forget to like the video, subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss out on any of our future contents. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good day. Bye bye.